I've shared the link yes.
Okay, that's fine.
So, hey everybody, we've had a crazy start, but it's 11:11, so I feel it's an auspicious crazy start to this gathering. And I'm one of the hosts, so is Julia, and we are inviting the lovely Anna Pearce, who is an expert, serious expert in property. And I think it would be good to just go around and just say who each are. Julia, do you want to say who you are
Yeah,
first?
sure. So I'm lovely to be here, as always, with Inara. So I'm Julia Hart, and I specialise in commercial property, and I've worked in property for around 8 years now. I absolutely love it, and I love the creativity of what you can do in commercial property. I also have a serviced accommodation business, and I've got some HMOs thrown in there as well. So I'm really excited to be here and to contribute to this great community where I really hope that we can bring some support and help and substance of information to those that are looking to move into the industry. So it's just a little bit about me.
Perfect.
Hello, I'm Anna. I'm Anna Pearce, also known as Property Empress. So yeah, I'm also a professional property investor. I started my portfolio 13 years ago. And oh, I should have put myself in place. Got people joining, which is great.
I'm handling that, don't worry. Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, I started my portfolio 13 years ago. I actually kind of started on the back foot. We had a load of debt. I was worried I was about to lose my job, which I did 3 months later, but we managed to build a property portfolio. We were actually flipping houses to clear the debt. Then we built a small portfolio of buy-to-let properties, got married, became financially free, basically bought our first home together, and went on to expand the portfolio. So we now have a buy-to-let portfolio in the Midlands. We have an Airbnb portfolio in the south of England, and I share lots of information and help on my different social media platforms. I would also say one of the other things I love sharing is about angel investors, because we didn't have any money when we got started. So I've always worked with investors for my business. And I honestly think anyone, there are so many angel investors out there. So I think anyone could build a property portfolio working with angel investors.
Amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So just to welcome Miriam, because we had momentary chaos, tech nightmare, but we're all calm now. And what I was going to say is if we could all mute until if somebody's speaking, just because it'll make a better recording. So if you don't mind muting, or I can mute you.
You might need to mute me. I don't know how.
I've done you. I've done. So I will do a mini intro to me, amongst other things, because I'm a spiritual business coach and I work in many businesses. But the launch pad for me was really when I had already been a professional photographer for a number of years. It's a great story, this, because I think I work a lot with the mindset to do with how you're going to step in really as an absolute beginner. So my university, I did university, but it was all in English literature and film studies and history. Had nothing to do with economics or business or anything. And I ended up working as a professional photographer for 20 years. And then I started to get this feeling, and it was a real gut instinct feeling, which is what launches so many of my businesses, that something was changing. And I really trusted that. I didn't know what it was. I was very successful as a photographer, but there was something about the way I was working, which was long hours on my own, not feeling like I was in a community. And so I ended up making a choice one Christmas Eve, as I was in a James Bond style flat overlooking the Thames, working in London. And my job was to do interiors at the time. So I was looking at interiors all the time. And this was like literally one of those James Bond type style flats. And as I looked over the Thames, I just went, it's Christmas Eve. when it becomes the new year and I'm expected to go back, I'm not going back. And it's a firm and solid, non-negotiable door shutting moment, which I really feel is part of why I've been so successful. I know when to move on or when to move into things. And so I had no idea what I was going to do. Like many of you women will just be like, I haven't got a clue what the next step is. But I was able to take some space over the Christmas time. And I think about 3 days later, I received an email which said, do you want to change your life? And I went, yes, I do. And I was so open because yes, it was a coach and it was a coaching community, but it was like, I just kind of trusted the process. So I filled in the forms, I answered some questions. And the next day they called me. They were from the States. So it's a heavy sales job. And the guy said, you perfectly qualified to be a calculated risk taker, not just a risk taker, but a calculated risk taker. And I know that of myself. I will take a risk, but there's a lot of components in it. And he said, so we'd like to invite you into the program called the Enlightened Millionaire Institute. And he said, and it'll be $6,000. And I was like, oh my God, like I don't have the money. So he said, well, do you have a credit card? And even that would send most of my friends crazy with this sort of idea that he was pitching. But I went, yeah, actually, yeah, I do have a credit card. So I used the credit card to get on the program. And 3 months later, the homework was to go and buy a property. Within the 3 months, I'd had to look at what my style, what my identity, what was the methodology that I wanted to use. But he said, you got to go buy a property. And I was like, oh, come on, like a homework, like rather than write a little essay, it's like, go buy a property. And I did. I had 100% trust throughout this experience. And that moment led me to starting on the property ladder and building a 10 million pound property portfolio. I knew nothing about economics. I knew nothing about business really, except to street side business. And I learned that I'm not saying it was easy, but I am saying I followed my gut and voila, this is what happened for me. And it's really one of many, many stories like that. So I'm going to help you with mindset. And we could open it up. Anna, why don't you, well, Julia probably wants to ask Anna questions, so I could mute and you go ahead, do that, and I can pin you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so what we really wanted to do was to make sure that we could give women a space, maybe women who are really looking to move forward in their lives and to create some further income. And we know sometimes that can be really difficult, and lots of people are looking at different areas of how they can do that. And obviously property is one of those things. Now, like Anna, both of us started from different careers and we moved into property. So we wanted to create a space where people that have an interest in property could come and find out some basics. But not just a big sales pitch. We want people to be able to come and actually really ask fundamental questions and get real answers. So I think it would be nice to go through some of those basics, and that's why we invited Anna to come on today, because we all understand what property can offer. We know that people have got money potentially sitting in the bank, but however, things our interest rates are not fantastic, even in the situation that we're all in now. So, putting your money into property is always, well, I don't like to say a safe place because we have to be a little bit careful with what we actually say. But it's got a fantastic track record. So if you're looking for one of the safer places to park your cash, then obviously property is definitely a good place. So often the questions that I get asked, because I specialize in commercial, so that covers all sorts of different things. So that's from HMOs, which are houses of multiple occupancy, buy-to-lets, which is obviously That's what it says on the tin. You can buy it and you can rent it out for income. So, of course, one of the major questions that I always get asked is where in the UK? So I'd be really interested to hear what Anna thinks, because there's always a bit of a north-south divide. So Anna, what are your thoughts around where you should be investing in the UK?
Yeah, I love it. Great first question. Thanks so much, Julia. And thanks for sharing like your interest as well. It's really lovely to hear you both. Yeah, area. Oh my gosh, like this, that's just such a relevant question in this market. So it depends on your strategy. So we have a buy-side portfolio in the Midlands, we have an Airbnb portfolio in the South. And the reason we do it that way is because we're very clear on what we're trying to achieve. So when we started, we were flipping houses. We were buying and selling houses to clear some debt. So that was our main strategy. I did an area comparison. So I looked at 3 areas and worked out and did the numbers and literally made an informed choice. Where's the best area for me to flip houses? That was my original strategy. So broadly speaking, the North is better for cash flow. The South is better for capital growth, like long-term uplift. So the vast majority, almost without exception, of people I speak to and I see online, they're looking for cash flow or an element of cash flow. So really the Midlands and North is better to start with. So we knew that we were going to be flipping houses, then we're going to be buying a buy-to-let portfolio to give us some nice passive income. That was our original. I mean, when we started, it was to build a passive income in case I lost my job, but unfortunately it was fast track because I lost my job quite soon afterwards. So I looked at 3 areas. I can't remember what they were, but Northampton, which is where I grew up, I knew the area. It wasn't the best area, but it ticks a lot of personal boxes for me. So we started in Northampton, we still invest in Northampton. So if you're looking to create a nice monthly passive income, the Midlands and North is a really great place to start. And I think we might be going into a little bit more detail later in the live about specific areas. I'm really happy to share, because I do area comparisons to my clients. I do private mentoring and I actually carry out area comparisons to them. So I've done basically all over the country. So I have literally compared lots of different areas, especially in the Midlands and North. So I can give you a few nuggets of areas that surprised me that were particularly good for cash flow. The reason we have our Airbnb portfolio in the South is because we do rent to rent. So we rent properties from landlords and we turn them into Airbnbs. We create an income from property we don't own. We live in the South, we manage them. So it makes sense to be in the South. I personally, I mean, never say never, I'm highly unlikely to ever buy a property for cash flow in the South because of look what's happening with mortgages. Mortgage rates have gone up, the cash flow is dropping. So 2 years ago, when we had record-breaking low interest rates, prices were booming, the South kind of worked, but that was a short-term fluctuation that's now gone against us. If you invest in the Midlands and North, you buy the right property in the right area, then it can create a great cash flow for you. And particularly for us investing in Northampton, they go up in value over the long run. And that was the short answer.
No, that's fantastic. But I think what I'd really quite like to understand a little bit more is a little bit about the analysis that you do. What are you looking for?
Yeah,
when you do that?
Well, when I do my area comparison.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, brilliant. So basically, again, most people are looking for cash flow. So in fact, I've got a client I spoke to yesterday who's going to have a strategy call next week. He has invested in London and it is a great long-term growth. He's had the properties for a number of years. He's got an £8 million unencumbered property portfolio. He wants to expand. So I'm like, let's look outside of London. So basically next week, we're going to do a strategy call. We're going to get very clear on what his strategy is, work out 3 areas, then I'll be doing the area comparison. So the area comparison is very simple. We're looking at cash flow. We're going to choose 3 areas in the Midlands and North. For him, it's probably going to be the Midlands because he lives in London. So he wants to look at Leicester because the family's from Leicester. He wants to do Northampton because he's interested in me sourcing in property. So we'll look at Northampton. He also has some links in Birmingham. So it's probably going to be those 3. We're going to be looking at the cash flow. So you can go to my social media. I go into more information about this, but I literally find the cheapest 2 or 3 bedroom non-auction property that's in fair condition in that area, like literally the cheapest property, because you're doing a comparison, you're not buying that property. And I work out the cash flow based on the current mortgage rates. So I might go to Leicester and find the cheapest 2 or 3 bedroom property, like maybe 150 grand, maybe a bit less. and I'll work out that property will cash flow around, say, probably £250–300 a month. I'll do the same thing in Northampton, I'll do the same thing in Birmingham. So I look at the cash flow, I look at the long-term growth. So I go to land registry, and I literally, you can price in Google land registry house price index, and I look at the 10, 3 and 1 year growth over the last 10 years for that area. It's not going to be the same, but it gives you an idea of the long-term growth and the short-term growth. So I look at the cash flow, the long-term uplift. I look at the number of houses. This is one that I've added relatively recently because I was doing a comparison for someone, and then it turns out there's literally 500 houses for sale, and there's just not enough houses for him to look at, you know, to work with. You really want at least 1,500, ideally at least 2,000 properties just for sale in the area. So just make sure it's a big enough area to go with. So they're the three main things. And then you have to apply what your own strategy is. So for this particular chap that I'm using this as an example, he wants to release the money and invest it. So he's looking at what's the best cash flow I can get for my money. So for him, I'd be going, right, so this cheapest house you bought for say 150 grand, you would need this much deposit, this much, you know, purchase costs, maybe put in an element of renovation costs. You're not going to be buying that exact property, but it's going to give you an idea. How much cash flow could you get in those three areas based on your own strategy? So some people it's like, I've got an amount of money to invest. Other people's like, I need to hit this much income so I can leave my job. For example, I'm working with angel investors, so technically got unlimited funds. So what area is going to work best? How, like, I maybe have the fewer number of houses to buy, like this, you know, smallest amount of investment funds. Like, apply it for your own strategy, and then you can make an informed decision on where the best area is for what you're trying to achieve.
Fantastic. There's some real golden nuggets in there. Really, really fantastic. So recently I've been doing some research as well about the 7 best areas and the areas that have come out on top just recently. So we've got Liverpool. Everybody knows about Liverpool,
Yeah.
Manchester, of course. We've got Leeds, Nottingham, Birmingham, and Bracknell, which is in Berkshire, which is the only southeast area that's actually come up. And I live fairly close to that area, and I've seen the growth and development there is quite unbelievable. But it is fascinating when all the information is out there. I think that's something that's really important to let people know. Is exactly what you said. You went to the government website. There's a lot of detail that is out there. There's lots of websites that will give you this kind of information. You don't have to necessarily buy it. It's out there, isn't it? So it's all available. So sometimes it just takes time to look for that information. But then, of course, there's people like yourself, Anna, that can help. So once you've decided on your particular area, which in property educational speak, they talk about it as gold mine area, don't they? That's well, I don't know if that's quite old-fashioned now, but that's what they used to call it when I very first started. So you choose this particular area, and then you start to obviously do a lot more research around that. So what do you think that you should be looking for within that area?
Oh, so once you've kind of narrowed it down to a particular area, I mean, the best thing, I used to say walk the streets, but sometimes people are going to areas that you really shouldn't be walking the street. Drive the area. There's a few things actually. I would definitely be going on like social media, saying like, if you're choosing an area that, you know, is away from where you live, which is absolutely necessary and certainly worth thinking about if you're living in the south and you're looking for cash flow, you don't have much money to invest, like at least consider it. You don't have to do it, you can make it work in other areas. But if you're going further, like north, for example, I would definitely jump online and I would put on like my Facebook personal profile. Does anyone like invest, or does anyone know this area? Talk to people who know the area, because I'm so happy. If people coming to Northampton, I'm so happy to sit down and go, this is a great, like the Eastern District is far superior to semi-long. You know, there's a red light district in Northampton, just be warned. It's not there anymore, but the prices are lower in that area. Don't get excited thinking you're getting a deal. It's a red light district. Like, talk to people who ideally invest in the area, or at least have lived there, know the area. Just chat about it. Like tell me what you think I need to know. I think that's a great first place to start. You can also download area guides. I used to love the mouse price area guides. Apparently they don't update them anymore, but I still think they're really good. So they just give you a little feel of what's in the area, what businesses in the area, the kind of, like, I think they talk about how much is owned versus rented, that kind of thing. It just gives you a feel of it. Otherwise, drive the area, go and stay in the area, do the like touristy things. Like even in Northampton, where I grew up, when we started investing, we went to the shoe museum, which Northampton is known for, the shoe museum. You know, kind of sums up my childhood, doesn't it? And how exciting I was living in Northampton. To go and like stay there, go and eat in the restaurants, visit the local sites, just really absorb the energy, the area. And go and meet estate agents, have a chat to the estate agents, be very open. Like if you go to Northampton, speak to all the estate agents, say, where should I invest? They will all take you to semi-long. And I 100% don't agree with that. I think the Eastern District is a far better area. But you can...
Well, I think I was just to say, I think it's really important to understand what the motivation is for an estate agent. They're looking to sell. They're not actually looking at your best interests at heart. That's why it's really, really important to talk to them, but also to do exactly what you're saying, Emma, and that's get on social media and talk to local people. You know, there are so many groups out there now that you can just jump on and start asking questions. It's not complicated. It's not difficult. It is just going and having a look around. And for me, it's knocking on doors, and again, that's probably a little bit old-fashioned. That's what we always used to do, but it is how you find out a lot of information. And ultimately, when you're doing something like this, you do want to be making an informed decision, don't you? You want to gain and pull together as much information, as well as, whilst you're going through this, making sure that you understand exactly what strategy you're going to use, because some strategies are going to work better in some areas than they are in others. So again, it comes back to...
Can I just pop in just right on this conversation, just for a sec, to say that the estate agents that I worked with a lot, I live in Crouch End in London, and I did all my property in London. And what I chose as a model was, where is the good area? And they'd always show me the good area because they want to sell expensive flats, right? Or properties. I would look at the great area and I would do the rim of the great area, which is a very unfortunate name. But I was like, show me the rim of anything that you're interested in. In time, what happened was the flats that I bought closer to the great area, that was the strategy for sure, to buy near a good area. But the ones which were further away into some of the dodgy red light, whatever you want to call it, areas, drug dealing, because Finsbury Park was a bit of a dive actually at that time. Crouch End is about 8 minutes away, and it's not a dive. When Finsbury Park got developed, that's where I made some of the biggest increases in money. It's because you're willing to, you're still looking for the good area, but it was just slightly nearer the dodgy area. When that changed, it was like, oh my God, the money, like everything doubled just like that. So just wanted to add that little 2 cents, and I will mute.
It's a very good point. I would wholeheartedly agree with that. When we started buying in Northampton, there was a property that caught my eye, because we buy dirty, smelly, disgusting houses. Is literally like we found this out, one of the estate agents laughed, because when you looked at our notes, he said it's written you buy dirty, smelly houses. I was like, that's actually true. We buy properties that don't need a full renovation, but just very off-putting for a lot of people. So first-time buyers aren't interested because it's really grotty, but builders can see there's not enough value to be added. So we go for the middle ground. So yeah, we were never taken to for what our strategy was. We were never taken to the nicer areas. But there was an area called Bellinge, which is probably one of the roughest areas in Northampton. And there was a property that caught my eye early on in my journey, and I was quite, I don't even know. I don't know if it was snobby. I think because I grew up there, my family, I go, oh, don't buy in Bellinge. So I was like, oh, so we didn't. And I always remember thinking it was such good price. It's such a perfect property for us. But I didn't want to buy in Bellinge because I was worried. And then a few years later, we got really into direct to vendors. So we have a lot of marketing out. you know, I buy houses any condition, call Anna. And one of our first calls was a lady in Bellinge, and we met her. She was fantastic. We bought the house. She referred us to loads of other people, which was great. And it's been our best property. It's the same thing. It has gone up the most. And as long as if you're picking the right tenant, again, matching the tenants, we find our own tenants. We have a system finding long-term dream tenants. Match the tenant to the property, and honestly, the rents, the uplift, it's been the best one. And I'm glad I eventually learned the lesson. So,
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. So I was thinking that maybe we should be talking or explaining to people what's the difference between some of the strategies that you've been talking about. So we're talking about buy-to-lets, and we're talking about HMOs, which have sort of multiple occupancy. So should we just explain? And then, of course, we've got serviced accommodation. So there are sort of three starter strategies, aren't they, that often people start out in. So do you want to just give us a little bit of an explanation on each of those, Anna?
yeah, sure. So basically, you have active strategies and you have passive strategies. So something like, because we also I mentioned flipping, so that's an active strategy. If you're not working, you're not earning effectively. So we were buying, doing up and selling houses. When we started, it was great to create cash sum to clear debt. There's also property sourcing as well, which is quite an active strategy. Then you have the passive income strategies, which most people think is the buy-to-let properties. You buy normally a house or a flat, and you rent it to a single couple or a family. Beautiful. They're called grunters, and they just sit, and they just turn out this beautiful income. So in this market, depending on the kind of property you're buying, you're going to be buying, say you buy a 100-grand property, it's going to give you maybe £250 a month net passive income. And it can, and most people have it, it's your bread and butter, it's your foundations. It's not going to be a game-changing income having one property, but it's the long-term uplift. It's the long-term growth. Property prices have historically doubled every 7 to 10 years on average in the UK over the long run. So buying one property now because I remember having this conversation with my sister, why only £250 a month? I was like, yeah, but imagine you buy a 100-grand property, you don't need 100 grand, you only need 25. Imagine you don't need any money. You work with an angel investor, you buy that property and it doubles in value over the long run. So the buy-to-lets are great. They're passive, hands-off, beautiful income. Then then a lot of people tend to look at the higher cash flowing strategies because they potentially want to leave their job. They want to cover their basic living costs, give themselves a bit of security. That was what my strategy was, what my goal was. You know, I'm worried that I'm going to lose my job. I want to get enough income to support myself, you know. So then you can look at HMOs or houses in multiple occupations or multi-let properties, where you could take the same 3-bedroom house with 2 reception rooms, for example, and you could turn one of the reception rooms downstairs into a 4th bedroom and rent that house by the room to students, nurses, like young professionals. There's loads of different types of tenant. There's much more regulation that comes with it, but the idea is you get much higher cash flow from it. It's a little bit with the market, with the rising cost of bills and with the mortgage rates going up, it's falling a little bit out of favour because the extra income you used to get, because very often you include bills with the rent, it's tending to fall, just the market's moving, it's tending to kind of fall a little bit out of favour because you don't get such a good income that you used to, and there's a lot of regulation that comes with it. But it's still worth considering. It's still, again, the right property in the right area is still an amazing strategy. And then you have the one that's kind of coming back in, or, you know, as HMOs may be falling away a little bit, service accommodation is coming in more. So service accommodation, I talk about Airbnb because people think of, like, people know Airbnb better than anything. Just so you know, Airbnb actually isn't a particularly big platform. Booking.com is a far bigger platform. All of our Airbnb's properties, all our service accommodation, we'll get at least twice as many bookings from Booking.com. It's also beyond Vrbo and all the other platforms. So Airbnb is well known, but actually it's not going to give you as many bookings as Booking.com. But basically, again, you could take a property. So we tend to have we have had houses, we tend to have flats, like 1 or 2 bedroom flats, and we basically rent them out. And again, people tend to think of Airbnbs as being holiday lettings, which you absolutely can do. But service accommodation is a whole different ballgame. It's much more seasonal. Like the buy-to-let's beautiful. It's this, like I said, the grunters, it just churns out this beautiful income. Service accommodation or Airbnbs is seasonal. However you do it, it's going to be seasonal. It's going to be up and down. and it's hospitality. I cannot stress you have to have thick skin. Like, it's been a learning curve for me as a massive people pleaser. And this is, you talked about mindset, you know, this definitely is one that you have to grow a thick skin, or you have to have a thick skin, not take it personally, because you can be the sweetest peach in the tree, but not everyone likes peaches. So service accommodation can create again, a much higher cash flow. So I talked about buy-to-let's typically £250 a month if you're buying kind of, 100, 150 grand property. HMO's probably, I haven't done the numbers recently, but it used to be kind of, I would say £800 a month. It's probably a bit lower than that at the moment. And service accommodation, really looking for about £1,000 a month net on average over the year. So we do have some holiday lets. We tend to look for hotel alternatives. So these are near the airport, they're in the city centre. We do have some. My husband loves the sea. He manages all of the properties, so he can't help himself to get ones by the sea. But they are more of a hotel alternative. So you can create a more consistent income through the year, but you have some natural fluctuations. January and February are quite quiet. Then obviously in like August, it's really, really busy, but you create a higher cash flow. It's a little bit more active. The two together, that's why we do the buy-to-lets, the long-term uplift, the beautiful passive income that's consistent. And then we do we do rent. We don't own the property, but we do the service accommodation. It gives a much bigger income, but it's more active. So the two together for us is, where the magic happens.
Yeah, so it works really well. As you know, I have service accommodation as well, and it's for me. So when I first went into it, like you, I had my own team. We looked after all the properties ourselves, and all good. COVID hit. That was quite tricky for me, though. What I did, and it was quite a difficult decision, because I've got quite high standards. And we were working, bringing in businessmen and executives, and obviously all that stopped. So we had to completely change strategies. However, what I did was I flipped over to using a management company, because I couldn't do all the work myself. I'm just one person. Obviously, the nightly rates went down, so I had to lose my team. However, I was concerned about taking on a management company, because they don't have the best of reputations. We all have to hold our hands up and admit. But I have to also tell you that it's the best thing that I ever did. They have been absolutely amazing. And it has become a very hands-off investment for me, which I really love. And it's wonderful, because it is now in a situation where the cash flow does come in. It is getting harder. There are a lot of people that are coming or swapping their buy-to-lets over into service now. So there's a little bit more competition. But you've got to do your numbers. That's the key, isn't it? And even now I do rent to rent as well. So my rents are going up. Things are changing. The nightly rates are not going up particularly. So you have got to keep doing those numbers, and you've got to keep making sure that you are because obviously we've had all the heating bills going up, all those sorts of things. So it is changing, but there are ways that you can make it passive if the numbers stack, and that's the key. Because some opportunities you might find that it will stack if you're doing all the work, not necessarily if it's going to be then having to pay a management company to have to come in and do those works. So there's lots of things around that. There are ways, because people often come into serviced accommodation, think it's going to be very, very passive, and it's not when you're doing it on your own. It's really, really not when you're doing it yourself. So it is important that you really work out, if you're going to use a management company, that you can sustain that, or the numbers can sustain that. That's going to be another 18% plus VAT on top of what you're bringing in, or what you're currently paying out for. So they are the three sort of first starter strategies, aren't they? So we've talked about areas, good areas in the country that you can do. We've talked about what sort of area, or where in those areas that you should be looking. So thinking about the demographic of people, because also if you're going to get a buy to let, what type of person do you want in that opportunity? Some people are very happy to have people that are on from social housing. Some people don't want to go down that route at all. They feel very concerned that's not the demographic of person that they're looking for, that they want to have executives. So there's pros and cons of those, aren't there, Hannah?
I'm like clenching, like, because I'm like, I don't want to yeah. So one of the things that we did early on was because we were taught, like when I did property training, we were taught use a letting agent, like make sure it's passive, give them like a certain amount that they can spend so that they don't have to come and say, tap stripping, can we send someone in? Like give them some, some power, like up to £150, whatever, just let them do it. So I was like, yeah, it makes sense. So we worked with letting agents first year, and it just, they were putting people in that we would never have put in ourselves, and we had high tenant turnover, and it took them a while to get people in, and we were just like, this isn't working. So I always say we, it was Drew was like, I can do better. So he started basically marketing the properties ourselves, and we started self-managing that, like literally after a year. So we've been doing it for 12 years. So we've developed this system of finding long-term dream tenants, and we renovate the property to a really good standard. We do as much of the regulation as we can before we market, and then we post on Facebook Marketplace photos of the property, information of the property. But it starts with credit issues welcome, DSS welcome, pets welcome, self-employed welcome. All the people who usually struggle with landlords and letting agents, we say we're not going to discriminate. We are going to be open to absolutely everyone. And as you can expect, we get inundated with applicants. So we normally have to pull the listing after about 24 hours because we have at least 100 applicants. I then go through a process. So I will say, thanks so much for your interest. Can you tell me a bit about yourself? Asking about, if I need to know anything about your credit, your income, who's going to be living at the property, and they'll kind of share that information. Then I'll do a video walkthrough of the property, and I'll send it to them and say, if you still want to be considered for the property based on the video walkthrough, like a virtual tour, let me know and I'll send you a viewing slot. So we whittle it down from probably like 120 applicants to about 10 really serious applicants. Well, there's normally about 20 people book on the viewings, but maybe half will turn up. So we'll go to about 10 people, and we will meet them, and we will literally match the tenant to the property. So the last time I did this, it was a chap that had 2 CCJs. He was living on a friend's sofa because no one would give him the time of day. He had more than, he was a carer, he had 2 jobs, he had more than enough income, he had a very thick accent, so it's quite difficult to understand him, but he's a really, really lovely guy. So I offered the property to him, and bear in mind, he had been basically turned down by absolutely everyone. And I was like, there's 100 applicants for offering it to you. He was over the moon. So he has never missed a rent payment. He looked after the property. We've said we're professional landlords. You can stay as long as you want. As long as you look after the property, pay your rent, stay as long as you want. And he's just so happy. So we have this dynamic with our tenants, and all of our tenants are long-term dream tenants. So I feel really, really passionately about particularly the DF, and we might misstep. One day we might put a tenant in who's, on benefits, has pets, all the stuff that a lot of people don't like, and they might be awful. But so far, touch wood, it hasn't let us down. But you can get someone who passes all the credits, etc. And they could be horrible, or you could have someone that has all this stuff and they could be horrible. You have to meet the person. But I certainly find that when a tenant genuinely is like, oh my God, I can't believe I've got this property, they're not likely to mess around, because otherwise we evict them. They're going to go into a pool of that 120 people that are struggling to find a property. So it's worked really well for us. I
think that's great to hear, because I think there is, we're predisposed to have certain opinions. And I think it's important to understand that even if you are working with local council tenants, that you can have contracts in place where the council will actually do any repairs. They have to make sure that that the property is back into the state that it was when they first let it out. So there are
just to say, Miriam's asked a question, so maybe we could address that for her.
Yeah. So it's about the
Do you
Yeah.
have
inspection.
beliefs? Do you, well, bells, I assume that's beliefs. I'm terrible with, you know,
No,
little, you shorten
buy,
it, I don't know what it means.
Buy to
it's
let.
buy to,
Oh, buy to let.
Uh,
Bells? That's what you call buy
I
to
think
let
it's
now?
no, I think it's autocorrect.
Oh, got it. Okay. Do you visit and inspect the property 6 monthly, yearly, or when you are called if there is a problem? Buy to let. Got it. I see you thing. Yeah.
It's a really, really
yes.
good question. We do
Yeah.
once a year. So basically, we have most of our tenants are on 1-year contracts. If we have a new tenant go in sometimes we maybe do a 3 or 6 month inspection, usually not. But no, we go once a year and we basically go see them. We're very clear with our inspections because tenants can get a little bit nervous that you're do you know what I mean? The whole energy of
Word is not very nice, is it? Inspection as a
exactly.
word.
So
Yeah.
we always say, like, we'd like to come and see you just to see if there's anything we can do, if there's anything in the property that needs a bit of work, because sometimes, you know, the tenants don't want to bother us. And also because of the fact that we, you know, property is our business, we might spot something that a tenant normally to do with water, like seals and stuff, that maybe the tenant doesn't think is a big issue, but we're like, no, we need to fix that. So we make it very clear we're not checking up on them. We're just coming to check in with them, see how they're doing, if there's anything we can do to help. But we go at the year because then we do the regulation. The gas safety naturally falls every year. We also get them onto new contracts. We can talk about rent increases and things like that. So yeah, we tend to do a year. But if there's any concern when someone had moved in, we might do one a little bit sooner. But to be honest, probably once a year. It's a really good question.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I do every 6 months, actually. We just go every 6 months, but that's also to check on other things as well. So it's not, you know, even to go, you know, we make sure the windows are cleaned and so on and so forth. So it's just going to generally check that everything else is okay, and that's HMOs that we look after. So yeah, I think it's your choice, isn't it? However, obviously with the change in the reform bills that are coming in, we might get a higher turnover of people potentially, because like you, we've always done 1-year contracts, but potentially that is going to change. So we might, if you are moving into property or looking to get buy-to-lets, you might want to think that potentially you might need to go in a little bit more often, because you may have a little bit more turnover of tenants with the new potential new rules that are coming in over the next few months. So I hope that answers Miriam's question. Hopefully we'll get a little thumbs up from her, something along those lines. Oh, fabulous! There you go. I just found the pictures of everybody.
Oh, okay.
Finally, sorry, because I'm on my phone. Yeah.
I think I'd like to add something as well, that it really doesn't matter when you start property. The conditions will be changing all the time, in flux. But one thing that was really fascinating to me was when I started, I saw an economic graph from about 1895, which was the very first economic graph of property. And they'd drawn London in all sorts of different colors, including the black and the brown streets were where you could hire assassins, and where it was like so dodgy to go, it's dangerous, you know, all of that kind of thing. So you were a brown turd color, and then they had black for really like, literally you could hire assassins, all the way up to gold, which was, of course, you know, like Chelsea. What you see over time is the gold has never changed. The gold is the gold is the gold, right? That's the center of attention of money. But what has changed is around the gold, you would have service colors. Let's say it was maybe purple or green. These would be people who would be servicing the rich. So there'd be some rows of houses right smack up against gold, which had been all the workers who had gone in to service those different wealthy people. Much of that, when you see what's happened in London, Bermondsey, which was on the docks, and it was a dive, and it was mostly brown and black and various other unpleasant colors, has now become gold because it's flipped over. They did a massive renovation site on the docks, and they've changed all of those things. The other thing that I learned from this graph, which was amazing, is this is literally the graph of history. So it starts like this. This is property. Never, ever, ever, ever change, ever. It does this. It's like a staircase going up. So when you look at the house that I live in, initially I looked at it and I bought a flat for £415,000. And I looked at it on that day that I bought it and I went, there's no way this could double. There's no way. Like, it was inconceivable. But because I know this, I'm like, oh, well, actually, in a short lifetime, part of my lifetime, I am going to see that flat worth $1 million. And the last time I had it, valued, it was 750,000. So when you see this and you start to understand how property works, there's always a great time to come in and it will seem better than maybe the time you come in. That's not true. Any time is a great time. You just are working with the conditions of whether rent is high or rent is low, property prices, interest rates are high, like right now, or low, and you just adjust your strategies. You adjust what you do. And then when you get hit with, say, something like I did, which was the 2008 massive crisis, and they said that, so I was not born in 1929. 1929 was a similar kind of emergency level of housing. You know, when businessmen in the 1929 who lost all their money overnight, they were committing suicide, throwing themselves off buildings. It was very famous in history for me. Then comes 2008. And right before it was the peak year. Money was just flying all over the place. And then it crashed overnight. And some people didn't survive because they didn't change their strategies. But if you just flow with this level of the rise and fall of prices and property, you can come in anytime and know the right strategy and you will make a lot of money.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Really, really great. Right, we've got one more question that I just noticed, which is from Nicola Humphrey. So it says, can I ask Anna about her criteria when deciding on an area for flips? I live in the south, but have always invested in cash flow in the north. I now want to look for flips for capital raising and I'm considering areas.
Yeah, thanks, Nicola. It's a great question. Also, I think you went on to say that your camera's off because you're not very well today, so I hope you feel better. Yeah, so when we were, this is a really good question because I focus so much on the income side of things, because although we flip to create money at the, to create cash to clear the debt at the start, I get like anxiety at the idea of selling properties. Like, I really don't like selling houses. So it's not something I talk about. And I was like, that's a really good question, because actually if I had a client that wanted to flip, I think for me it's because I'm always leaning into the passive income. So when we started, we were looking for, well, we're going to flip, then we're going to do buy-to-lets and HMOs. That was our original strategy when I was working. We didn't end up doing HMOs because I actually didn't have to because of everything that happened. But for me, I was like, I'm going to look for an area that works for flipping, buy-to-lets and HMOs. And that, when I did my area comparison, that was what I was looking for. So if you already have properties in the north, and if you have the contacts, if you have, the tradesmen and everything, that you know the areas, I would definitely consider looking in the north. But in terms of doing the numbers, in terms of the criteria, I think it's gonna be very, I think you can flip anywhere pretty much, as long as if you're buying, I think it's more about buying the right properties and doing the numbers to make sure that you have it. I think the main like limiting factor is going to be the amount of money you have to invest. So a lot of people, have X amount of money to invest. So then I'd be looking at, talk to a good mortgage broker, this is how much money I have to invest, what lending can I get? Because your financial criteria will potentially restrict where you are. If you have a large amount of money, or if you're working with angel investors, like for me, I know that I'm not limited by money because I have the angel investors. I would still invest in Northampton because I know the area, because I know that I can get cheap houses. There's less risk if I'm flipping a 200 grand house versus gosh, where I am, like 800 grand. Like there's less risk. So again, I would suggest Midlands and North. In terms of the criteria, again, it's about mainly buying the right properties in the right area. When I started, I was told to look at like, because it was the first strategy we did. I was told to look at the income ratio, but I honestly don't think that that's necessary. I think I would be probably looking at an area that has affordable housing. And do you know, actually, I would also, okay, I'm thinking this, but I love questions that I don't know the answer to. So you're unfortunately getting my process here. The main thing I would say is I would still go Midlands and North. It will work in the South, but I think you will limit your risk a little bit more in the Midlands and North. I also would, because with flipping, you want to be getting the cheap discounted properties. So you want to be getting ideally direct to vendor, auction properties, or existing relationships with estate agents. That's the best way to get discounted properties. So I know when we were first investing in Northampton, I mean, it's a different time then, you know, auctions are all they're much more like, they've got modern method now. But auctions didn't work in Northampton. Like it just didn't work. It does now, but it didn't at the time. So I'd be looking for an area, particularly if it's a new area, you know, I'd be looking for areas where, and again, Liverpool's a really good example of this because I've been in Liverpool. All the dirty, smelly houses, the cheap houses go through auction. So I would be looking at an area where auction properties work, or where, you know, you can build the relationships with estate agents or get direct to vendor up and running ideally. I feel like there should be a third one. So it's like Midlands and North, an area where you can get discounted properties. I feel like there should be a third criteria. I hate having just two criteria, but they're the two main ones that I would say.
I would
Julian?
say a
Yeah.
third. I would add in a third. I worked with a lot of properties that had uh, problems, and they would be dirty and smelly, and they would also potentially have just a little insurance issue. So it would be like a bay window of one of them that I remember was in an insurance claim situation. It was part subsidence and it was part, how they can lean out a bit. I assessed this and I thought this is not a big deal. Even if I had my builders deal with that, that property made a fortune. So you can look at things which nobody wants to touch because they want everything perfect. Even if it's smelly and dirty, they want to naturally think, oh, I could clean this up and it would be fine. Actually, if you
Yeah,
go one step further and you just think, mostly builders can deal with anything, really. That was
yeah,
my approach with it.
yeah,
And I made, that was an amazing deal, that particular one. So I would add that to it. Look for things with problems, not massive
yeah.
problems.
Issues,
Yeah,
issues that can be solved. So
exactly.
you know, you have a solution mindset. I think is really important. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I think we've done an hour. I'm at the Arts Club actually in London, and I've got people waiting for me. So I am probably going to have to close off today. But I really hope that people have enjoyed it. I think it's going to be something what we will do on a fairly regular basis. Please watch in the group and ask questions in the group. That's what we want you to start doing. We want people to start talking, start asking questions, because we're there to support and to help people start their journeys. We've all started, we've all done what we have, and we've all done different things as well. Obviously, I've ended up doing lots of acquisitions, but we have all done different things. So please feel free to ask those questions and reach out to any one of us. Obviously, have a look at my website as well, because we have got below market value and high yielding properties up in the Midlands and the North, which we sell, which are not, they're off market properties. So have a look at those if you are looking to make a start, and come and ask some questions.
You can
Absolutely.
actually
So,
drop a link to your below value properties.
oh yeah, it's a good
Be
idea.
good. Yeah.
Yes,
So what I
yeah,
would say is I'm going to add in links so we can put in a big thank you to Anna.
absolutely.
Just add something if you want to connect with her. We will generally be running things with different kinds of experts to give you a full flourishing,
Mm-hmm.
really big picture view of property, and also to encourage you to consider doing it. you know.
Yeah,
At some point
absolutely.
we will be bringing in a training, so watch
Mm,
this space. And there are other
yeah.
options where, for instance, I know people who are they're too uncomfortable with wanting to do it, so they want somebody else to do it for them,
Hmm.
to make the assessments
Hmm.
and that. So that is also
Hmm.
possible. And
Yeah.
just thank you so much to Anna, and thank you to everybody
Yeah.
who joined us. Total
Yeah,
pleasure.
absolutely. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
thank you. And Anna does one-to-one training. So if you want to work with Anna, I think she's put all her socials and information in the group. So reach out, and I hope to see you all again very soon. Thank you all so much.
Can I just add one
Yeah.
quick thing as well?
Yeah,
I have
absolutely.
lots of different stuff that I share, but one thing that I think would probably be a really good place to start if you're interested is I do the Property Empress podcast, and season 1, episode 3 is the 7 steps to get started with property investing. So if you're
Oh,
kind of
fantastic.
interested, it's really nice. It just breaks it down for you. So
Yeah,
yeah,
sounds
I'll put a
good.
link on my welcome post specifically
Yeah,
for that.
do. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so
Wonderful.
Okay,
much. Thank
guys.
you for inviting me, and
Thank
it's
you all
lovely
so
to meet you
much.
all.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you for being here. Bye,
Bye.
everybody. Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.